With some strobing, BBC Two talks monkey business.
This is the story of how two of Britain's most powerful companies took a gamble on digital TV.
You plug it into the aerial and in 2 minutes we can start choosing our channel package.
But instead of revolutionising British television, ITV Digital cost the bosses and their companies £1 billion. Now they regret ever trying to go head-to-head with the global media mogul Rupert Murdoch.
It's like asking a pygmy to take on a giant. They are just not up to it.
The collapse of ITV Digital has left some of the most famous names in English football facing ruin. The Football League are going to court to win back their lost TV money.
I think they're corporate bullies. I think they're walking away from their responsibilities.
It's left 1 million subscribers in the lurch and commercial television in disarray. So how did a service fronted by a monkey turn into Britain's most expensive TV disaster? And was it doomed from the start? Ever since it began, nearly 50 years ago, ITV has been a goldmine. Popular programmes led to high ratings, which led to booming advertising revenue and fat profits. Helped by the fact that each ITV company enjoyed a regional monopoly, it was famously labelled a licence to print money.
ITV was an absolutely great business. For 20 or 30 years, if you had an ITV licence, you would make money and you would make lots of it.
By the 1990s, the television business was rapidly evolving. The next big money spinner was supposed to be digital television. The man leading ITV's charge into the new era was Carlton boss Michael Green, one of ITV's big two. The golden boy of British TV wanted a slice of the digital action and the cash bonanza it promised.
Michael Green is a driven entrepreneur, the sort who didn't have a O-level to scratch himself with hardly, who always wanted to go into business and was always sure he would be successful.
Green was aided and abetted in the hunt for expansion by Charles Allen, the head of the other dominant ITV company, Granada. Allen had a reputation for caution. He'd worked his way up through the catering wing of Granada, famous for its filling service station food.
Charles Allen's a good businessman. He has a number-crunching background. He is competent, works very hard. He's an efficient businessman, but he's essentially a corporate manager. He's not an entrepreneur.
This man was the reason Green and Allen were so keen to get into the new digital technology. It was their one chance to compete with Rupert Murdoch, and on his own turf. Murdoch's satellite, multi-channel Sky was already eating into ITV's audience and profits. He was planning to go digital, but Green and Allen believed they could offer a better digital system, one that only needed your existing aerial. In the brave new future of broadcasting, it would provide better pictures and more channels. Now, the beauty of using your existing aerial is supposed to be that you go down the shops, you pick up this box, and you plug in and play. Simple. In theory, at least. It was called digital terrestrial TV. Green's next brainwave was to neutralise the enemy by getting Murdoch and Sky in on the project.
He knew he couldn't do it on his own, so he started talking to Sky. Sky thought, great idea. There are people who don't want Sky. There are people who don't want satellite dishes on their houses. This will take our programmes to another raft of the population that can't be reached in any other way.
Sky, Carlton and Granada together were a dream team. Now they were ready to rock.
Those three together looked very formidable indeed. The two largest ITV companies combined with the largest new media company with all the programme rights, like rights to the Premier League, film rights. At that stage, there was even a chance it could have worked.
But the ménage à trois was not to be. The regulators thought Sky was already too powerful. They threw them out of the project.
Rupert Murdoch was absolutely livid to see that Sky was being thrown out of this consortium. He thought it was absolutely outrageous.
Suddenly, the ITV chiefs found themselves in opposition to Sky, in a business arena in which they were novices.
I think privately, nobody would say it publicly, there's a very macho management culture in television, and nobody would have said we're actually now quite scared. But I think that it went through all of their minds.
We have talked to many of the big players involved in the ITV Digital saga. Curiously, for people who work in television, they all declined to be interviewed on this television programme. But on one thing, they all agree. Without Sky, the new service was already in big trouble. History should have taught the ITV bosses to tread very carefully. Just a decade earlier, another confident outfit had taken on Sky from this very same building. The mistakes they made in this haunted house were an omen for what was to befall ITV Digital. British Satellite Broadcasting was a satellite TV operation to rival Rupert Murdoch's Sky. It enjoyed the backing of the British broadcasting establishment. As Deputy Chief Executive, John Gow knows about its rise and fall. He's still bruised from the experience.
All British television is the story of the establishment against Murdoch, one way or the other.
BSB got off to a bad start. In spite of spending £800 million on launching their own satellite, their technology let them down.
BSB was supposed to launch maybe autumn of '89, and everything was going to launch, new system, new thing, wasn't ready. Sky came in first.
BSB pinned their hopes on a crucial weapon in their arsenal, a square aerial.
BSB was supposed to have this wonderful new squarial. Everybody said it's nice and small and convenient and pretty, and they're not going to want big satellites, they're going to want small ones. Frankly, it didn't make an iota of difference.
Murdoch appointed Andrew Neil to be the chairman of Sky. Together they hatched a cunning plan.
There was BSB with its squarial. There were our dishes, which were the size of dustbin lids. It was like VHS versus Betamax. You didn't know which one to take. So we said, just give them away. People don't have to buy them. And of course, within a year, we sold over 1 million homes.
BSB also found themselves immersed in a dangerous bidding war with Sky over rights to show top films, and ended up getting stung.
Millions of pounds. I can't tell you how many. It was 250 million pounds spent in the end on rights for movies.
The battle for films was the final blow. Sky effectively took over BSB. Those trampled underfoot by the Murdoch machine watched the launch of digital terrestrial with a grim sense of déjà vu.
I thought, here we go again. Here we go again. I mean, you know, they've learnt nothing and they've forgotten everything.
Undeterred, the intrepid Michael Green forged ahead, and in 1997, his digital brainchild got the go-ahead.
Award each of the 3 licenses to British Digital Broadcasting.
Green was ecstatic.
Many congratulations to everybody that's worked extremely hard on this.
Digital terrestrial was hailed as a new force in British TV, and Carlton and Granada called their baby On Digital. In Reigate, TV salesman Mark Arnell certainly had high hopes.
When I first launched, it was going to be brilliant for us. I was taking names and addresses 3, 4, 5 months in advance. It was going to be the change for the future.
But there was an immediate problem. Sky had perfected their digital satellite system, and they launched first in the autumn of '98.
From the 1st of October, the control of television is in new hands. Yours.
In Sky launching first, already the drums were beating, if you like, in the jungle, and we thought, we've seen this before. This is what happened 10 years previously, which is Sky rushed to market with a product ahead of the then rival BSB. So So immediately you knew that anyone going into Dixon's and asking for digital television, who would have heard about it, who would have caught the buzz from On Digital, etc., would be offered one thing, and that was a Sky box.
A month later, with great fanfare and at a cost of £56 million, On Digital launched its new service. They threw a large party to celebrate.
Do you think I've got enough bar?
And spent a fortune on ads. They told us they were going to change the way the country watched television. Throughout the UK, viewers could scarcely contain their excitement. But the launch was marred by a series of disastrous bungles. Their first mistake was pretty basic. They hadn't produced enough boxes. Poor Mark Arnell had none to sell.
We ordered the boxes in May. They launched in November and basically just did not turn up. People on the phone asking where the boxes were, and we couldn't tell them whether they can even have them before Christmas.
Mistake number 2 was to underestimate Sky's aggressive marketing. 7 months after their launch, Sky decided to give away their boxes free to subscribers.
I've heard Michael Green of Carlton say that they were surprised when Sky gave away the digital boxes. Now, I cannot believe that anybody could be surprised by this. Anybody who's a Murdoch watcher should have told them that.
The Money programme has learnt that On Digital management had privately suggested to Green and Allen that they give away free boxes too, but they'd said no. Now Sky was doing it, they had no choice but to announce their own free offer. It cost them a cool £240 million.
Mr. Cleary from Sutton Coldfield, your On Digital set-top box is here waiting. It's absolutely free while you subscribe.
But then they had to let people like Mr. Cleary know of the change, so they spent millions more on advertising.
This box will change the way you watch telly forever. It'll entertain you.
John Brett was a typical customer, one of 500,000 who signed up in the first year of the offer.
We sent off for the box, and the box arrives via courier, and you just plug it in and off you go, allegedly.
Allegedly. What On Digital didn't advertise was that behind the scenes there were some huge technical problems. The signal they used to broadcast was so weak that to get a picture you often had to upgrade your aerial, which kind of defeated the object.
We had 2 upgrades and we had 2 boxes, and I had to be sort of fairly firm with them really and say, look, I've had enough now, you know, this isn't good enough.
Because the digital terrestrial signal shared the same transmitters as the old-fashioned signals, it couldn't be too strong, or else it would ruin everyone else's reception. On Digital claimed the broadcasting authorities misled them on this. That was of little comfort to customers.
And what was the last straw for you?
My wife and I were sitting down watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the last episode, and it locked up on us, and it just broke up, and that was it. She started throwing things around, and that was it.
Enough was enough.
Enough was enough.
John Brett was amongst the many customers who tore up their On Digital contracts and moved to their rival Sky. On Digital weren't just selling customers down the river, they were now giving them away.
Breeze?
Home?
There was yet another problem. Programme content.
Entertainment.
This is the channel where you can shop.
The critics had a field day.
What kind of programmes impressed you, or didn't?
I like to sort of dip in and out, and when I dipped in, I dipped out pretty quickly, because there frankly wasn't very much there.
Greatest way to shop.
They had channels like Breeze, they had Taste. What were they like?
Oh, Taste was Anthea Turner's, Taste and Anthea Turner in the same sentence, who'd have thought it. It was her big comeback venture. Well, it was just a kind of low-budget rip-off of Food and Drink. Why mess around with this on a low budget, or sometimes not always a low budget, but basically a low budget, and you were just covering something that had been well covered everywhere else.
This is the 90s.
In fact, On Digital did show some popular programmes, but they were provided by Sky. Sky Premiere, for instance, showcased first runs of big movies.
It turned out that their premium programming all came from Sky in the first place. How could you go into battle with your main competitor with your weapons being those provided by the other side. I mean, it just beggars belief that that's what they thought they could do.
And there was a further snag, the cost of showing Sky's programmes. Originally, they'd thought they'd have Sky as a business partner and get discounted prices for their channels. But Sky as competitors were now charging them the full retail price. This set them back a further £60 million a year. Sky had On Digital over a barrel. It was all going horribly wrong. By June 2000, a year and a half in, they'd spent nearly £500 million with not much to show for it. Green and Allen were not getting on. On Digital, as one executive told us, was now the child of a broken home. They needed to get things back on track. They needed something exclusive, something unique. In the third week that June, all the major football rights came up for grabs.
There was a feeding frenzy at the time. It was the very, very, very peak of the pricing of sports rights.
On the Wednesday, On Digital bid for live Premiership rights, but lost out to Sky, who paid £1.1 billion. The management of On Digital wanted to bid more, but Carlton and Granada wouldn't finance a higher offer.
There is a case for saying if they had had the Premiership rights, they would have given themselves a lifeline. Not only that, but they would have crucially hauled Sky's business onto the waterline.
By the Friday, all that was left was the rights to the Nationwide Football League, by definition a second-best product.
Have a good day.
David Gold is chairman of Birmingham City. He knows that languishing in the lower league means you're out of the big TV money. At that time, the Blues were getting a measly £600,000 a year, and TV execs weren't expecting a big rise this time.
Nationwide Football had a market value which everyone knew, which was somewhere in the £20 to £30 million a year range. That was what ITV had paid for it, that's what Sky had paid for it, that's what it was worth, basically.
On Digital paid considerably more than that, and football chiefs could scarcely believe their luck.
Well, everybody's saying that. Good luck. Yeah, good.
Gold was with the other Football League chairman when they heard the news.
I remember the big presentation and the way in which it was put to us. It was, you know, hugely exciting to everybody. And then suddenly the main man from ITV gets up on the stage and he says, "Gentlemen, 315 million. Paused and said it again. 315 million. And we're all doing the calculations in our minds, and I'm thinking to myself, that's about 3 million for the first division clubs per year for 3 years. So it's hugely, hugely exciting, and I can remember the buzz throughout the room. It was tremendous.
Sadly, the deal didn't work for On Digital. TV audiences for some games were as low as 1,000. Former adversaries were scathing in their criticism.
ITV Digital, they were prepared to pay sums of money which would buy you the crown jewels, but instead got a few coppers. And there was no way that they could ever get their money back. 315 million for a set of B division teams that very few people would watch. It would have been cheaper to have sent everybody a video of the game.
It looked like an own goal. Nationwide League football was no panacea for On Digital's woes. More than a quarter of its customers were still abandoning the service every year. This is known as the churn rate.
On Digital was suffering 28% churn. That is phenomenally high. An unsustainable basis for running your business. It basically means that having given away a decoder box, you're going to lose that customer in 3 years anyway. So your chances of recovering your investment are very, very low.
By May 2001, they'd ploughed £700 million into the whole disastrous project, and share prices for the once booming ITV companies began to plummet. Granada's by 30%, Carlton's by 60%.
They thought the situation was serious. They thought a continental European would come in and buy the companies because the share price was depressed.
things had got so bad that in June, Charles Allen, the more cautious of the two chiefs, wrote to the Prime Minister asking for his help. He said that Granada shareholders were running out of patience.
A further depressed share price could exhaust our shareholders' tolerance in our continuing investment in On Digital.
On Digital was now a family at war. To the management, the letter was a slap in the face.
When a businessman has to write to the Prime Minister for help, you know the business is finished. Charles Allen's letter to the Prime Minister, which infuriated the other people involved in this in ITV, was in effect a hauling up of the white flag.
3 years after the launch, they took one last gamble. In spite of all the money On Digital cost, they dropped the name.
On Digital, the clear choice.
They'd spent millions upon millions getting the idea that this strange thing is called On Digital, which wasn't, I think, the best choice of a name anyway, but at least people knew what it was. I know why they did it. They thought, we'll put the weight of the ITV brand behind this, and it will help with the cross-promotion and the marketing.
Actually, the new name was ITV Digital, and they signed up a new star to launch it.
Once upon a time, there was a big thing called On Digital. One day, it changed its name to ITV Digital. The end. A good night.
We had the idea of two guys watching television talking about TV, and then we sat there and thought, brilliant, why don't we make the smart guy a monkey?
Where's the dish? With this, we don't need a dish. We can get up to 50 channels through the ITV Digital box. Oh, a box? I told you. You plug it into the aerial, and in 2 minutes, we can start choosing our channel package.
I can't even get undressed in 2 minutes.
A guy who asks questions and a smart guy with all the answers is, if you think about it, a double act. It's the old, age-old, whether it's Lauren and Hardy, Abbott and Costello, Morecambe and Wise.
What on earth is that? Next door, they're having a satellite dish.
Everyone loved Monkey, and the campaign won lots of awards, but it wasn't enough.
Right.
There's an old adage in advertising, nothing kills a bad product quicker than great advertising. And I'm afraid, to a certain extent, this is evidence of that. What this little fellow did was make an awful lot out of very, very little.
Monkey made no difference to the bottom line. At the start of this year, the share prices of Carlton and Granada were still low. ITV Digital was now in serious trouble.
That was very close to the end of the road as far as Michael Green and Charles Allen were concerned. They had this choice. Do we go ahead and pour in another couple of $100 million, or do we try to negotiate all our deals? I think they identified fairly early on that on the existing cost structure, the business had no future at all.
They decided to try to renegotiate. In February this year, they approached the Football League to see if there was anything that could be done. They were received with horror. Birmingham chairman David Gold couldn't believe they could suddenly try to move the goalposts.
And all of a sudden, we wake up one morning and we start to hear rumblings that ITV Digital have got their problems. But we're not really bothered, because every single chairman believed that that deal was cast iron and backed by Granada and Colton.
The Football League refused to play ball. The administrators were called in, and on May the 1st, it was all over.
Most of ITV Digital's programmes went off the air this morning. The administrators pulled the plug after failing to find a buyer.
Back in Reigate, viewers were left with a useless box and no ITV Digital. Even though many had paid up front, they'd little choice but to move to Sky.
When I heard that it got off on the news, I decided I had a look at the channels, see which ones were on and which were off. So obviously all the pay ones, the sports, and a couple of the other ones were off. So immediately I had to make a decision, because when you've got two boys, you've got to keep them happy. So the best thing to do was get it sorted out as quick as possible. So that's why I wanted to change to Sky.
It wasn't just the customers.
There you go. Thank you.
The Football League were also losers. All clubs now face the prospect of missing out on 2 years' TV revenue. For First Division clubs like Gold's, that's £3 million. But Gold and Birmingham have one last shot at getting out of this mess. They've reached the First Division playoff final.
Our effort.
9 years.
If Birmingham win, they'll be in the Premier League and become a much wealthier club, courtesy of Sky.
15 million is the cheque that we would pick up if we win today, just from the TV income. And of course, we leave behind the tragedy of ITV Digital collapse.
Because of the ITV Digital fiasco, it's estimated as many as 30 clubs could go under. Today, each error, each foul, each miss could mean the difference between survival and extinction. 1 goal down, Birmingham managed to equalise. Eventually it comes down to penalties, and indeed, a £15 million spot kick. Birmingham are in the Premier League and out of financial hell.
We were fantastic. Was that difficult? Oh. Yeah, shake the hand.
Nearly 70 other football clubs aren't quite so fortunate.
Here, the Football League is suing ITV Digital for the £178 million it says it's owed for the right to televise nationwide league matches.
Green and Allen soon let it be known that they didn't feel liable for the money owed by ITV Digital to the Football League. But they didn't speak publicly until Charles Allen ventured onto the radio at the end of May to deny any responsibility for the debt.
The question comes down to, did Granada or Carlton give parent company guarantees? And, Granada and Carlton did not give parent company guarantees. On Digital entered into this contract, and there are no parent company guarantees. We're moving on from ITV Digital, and we're driving our core business.
They were washing their hands of the whole business, taking their ball and going home. Since then, the share prices of both Carlton and Granada have collapsed further, and the future for the big chiefs at ITV looks bleak.
I think Green and Allen will both be out of a job probably within the next 3 years. You don't recover from failure of that magnitude very easily.
From the glory days to the gutter, but the collapse of ITV Digital threatens to have far wider consequences for the TV industry as a whole. A few weeks ago, the government unveiled radical plans to open up commercial television to outside ownership. Some feel that Green and Allen have brought this upon themselves.
They have absolutely torn the guts out of the commercial sector. Our 2 strongest ITV companies are in loss, and the government, in, if you like, a fit of pique, has punished ITV for messing up digital terrestrial television by putting legislation on the books which allows them to be taken over by anybody. Actually think that this will bring in, if you like, foreign ownership. It will make Sky part of the broadcasting establishment in a way that it hasn't been before.
So, Rupert Murdoch emerges as the only clear victor in this sorry tale. Sky recently reported healthy profits. Oh, and there is one other winner. Monkey. Next stop, Hollywood. Next week, Commandos of Cool, on the front line with the guerrilla marketing men. How can they make a new range from one of the world's most successful jeans companies look hip and street?
A real test for the Would Like to Meet team, next on BBC Two.
At 8, ITV1.